We'll talk about the confirmation hearing, what is expected, but we also want to look at her record. What has been her record, the cases that she has presided over? This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute.
Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible said, and it still is news. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own. Yes, the strong gets more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grade. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God...
Billie Holiday, God bless the child. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're talking about the nomination of Judge Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court. Confirmation hearings to follow. If confirmed, she will be the first Latina justice, the third woman on the Supreme Court. Our guests are Cesar Perales, President and General Counsel of Latino Justice, formerly known as the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. Juan Manuel Garcia-Passalacqua joins us from Puerto Rico, independent political analyst, knows Sonia Sotomayor well. In a moment, we're going to be going to Marjorie Cohn, President of National Lawyers Guild, professor at Thomas Jefferson School of Law in San Diego. But we want to look right now at Judge Sotomayor's record. Tom Goldstein, you founded the SCOTUS Blog, Supreme Court of the United States, devoted to the Supreme Court, and you've summarized her cases. Can you go through what you feel are the most important ones and how she's ruled?
Well, the thing about a judge like Sonia Sotomayor, who's been on the Court of Appeals for more than a decade and then was a trial judge for a long time, is that she has an unbelievable body of work. There are literally hundreds of opinions, and we could talk about particular ones, but I think the overarching point for your listeners is that she is on the left, but far from the radical left. You'll hear a lot of complaints about conservatives that she's an ideologue and a judicial activist, and I think there's really no evidence at all that that's correct. She seems to take each case as it comes to her, and she sometimes rules for plaintiffs, sometimes for defendants, sometimes for the government, sometimes for companies. And you get a sense that she's just very thorough and very balanced, and has been said, and is obvious from how well she did academically, she's very smart.
And go through what you think are some of the principal cases.
Well, I think that one case that maybe we could talk about cases that will receive a lot of attention so that your listeners, as they hear more about Judge Sotomayor, will know what it is that a little bit more about what people are talking about. There is the case that's talked about the most is the so-called New Haven firefighters case. This is a case out of New Haven, Connecticut, where the city had a promotional exam for firefighters. And after the exam was administered, it turned out that white firefighters did much better than black and Hispanic firefighters, particularly black firefighters, and that promotions in the city as a consequence would be skewed. And the city decided not to use the results of that test, but to find another promotional exam. And Judge Sotomayor was part of a 3-judge panel that said that the white firefighters didn't have a legal claim against New Haven. So this is a very difficult case about the balance between trying to have diversity in the workforce versus not discriminating against the white firefighters. And that case is now in front of the Supreme Court right now. Another case that tells you a little bit about where Judge Sotomayor stands versus the rest of the Supreme Court that is an issue in front of the justices right now. The justices have a case involving a strip search of a young girl at school because the school had some concern that maybe she had aspirin or some other drugs on her body. And it looks like the Supreme Court is going to rule for the school that that kind of search is okay. Judge Sotomayor had a case in the Second Circuit where she said, no, that's far too intrusive for this poor little girl. And both Judge Sotomayor and Justice Ginsburg in the Supreme Court seem much more attentive from their own personal experiences to what that kind of search would be like for a young child, for a young girl. On the other hand, people shouldn't get the impression that she's, always on the left or radical, as I say. She had a case involving accidental mistakes by the police, where she said that those don't justify suppressing the results of a search by the police. And the Supreme Court came out the same way this year in a case called Herring. So she's dealt with a huge number of issues, seems to be quite balanced in them, and her decisions are very thorough.
Tom Goldstein, didn't she also have a case, a key case on environmental issues, on the whether the how the EPA could use cost-benefit analysis in determining limits on pollution?
Yes, this is the River Keepers case. She said that when the EPA was making determinations about what kind of equipment should be used in plants, it shouldn't be evaluating sort of whether this way of protecting the environment was too expensive, that Congress hadn't told the EPA to do that. And so her decision was more pro-environmental. The Supreme Court reversed that decision. So she has been in front of the Supreme Court in opinions that she has written 5 times. That's not that many over a very long career. You're talking about somebody who's been in the Court of Appeals for 11 years. And that's a decision that was reviewed that was reversed.
And you also write, Tom, about the cottage industry that has developed around Supreme Court nominations and how side from both the left and the right gear up for these nominations. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's as with Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito, who are really smart people. They are more conservative than me, to be sure, but they have a lot of integrity. They are, good judges. And when they were nominated by President Bush, they were attacked mercilessly by the, folks on the left. And same with Judge Sotomayor, a person of incredible integrity, great intelligence, and now attacked from the far right. And the cottage industry point is that these groups gear up now, and this is their principal fundraising mechanism, to say the president now is trying to either destroy the Supreme Court or save the Supreme Court. You need to support us. And that's not to say that those groups don't have really good faith disagreements about the law. There are incredibly important debates, but what happens, unfortunately, is that we lose sight of the debate, and these individuals who are public servants. Sonia Sotomayor started as a prosecutor. She has been a trial judge and then a Court of Appeals judge for decades now. She doesn't have 2 dimes to her name. She could have made so much money. And they get attacked mercilessly and personally rather than having the big debates over how the Constitution should be interpreted. So even though it's certain that Judge Sotomayor is going to be confirmed, absolutely certain, absent some totally unexpected ethical transgression, she is going to go through the ringer now so that these groups are able to fundraise.
Marjorie Cohn, you're president of the National Lawyers Guild. Your response to the nomination of the first Latina justice of Judge Sotomayor to the Supreme Court?
Well, Amy, I think it's very significant that she would be the first Latino on the Supreme Court, and she certainly would bring the number of women on the Supreme Court to 2, and that's also very significant. She will not appreciably change the political balance on the court. She will probably be a reliable liberal, very much in the vein of David Souter. Cases about executive privilege will invariably come before her, such as interrogation policies, preventive detention, state secrets, and her views are largely unknown on issues of executive privilege. She is a mixed bag. I would not call her a left liberal. She will not be a William Brennan or a Thurgood Marshall or an Earl Warren. Yes, she has ruled in the ways that Tom said on the firefighters case, on the environmental case, but she is a career prosecutor. She was a career prosecutor, and I'm hoping that she has empathy for criminal defendants and their constitutional rights. She ruled in 2 significant cases to uphold searches where the search warrants were unlawful. She upheld the Bush global gag rule that made it harder for women to get abortions. She ruled against plaintiff correctional officers who were retaliated against for making complaints. And she also has a significant background as a corporate lawyer. She dissented in a 2-to-1 decision ruling against the families of victims of the TWA plane crash in New York. So I think she will be a mixed bag. She will probably be more on the liberal side, but I